Some places never sleep. Offices, for example, especially those where the work never seems to end. But what happens when the ones working late aren't alone? Tonight, I want to tell you about something that happened in a place just like this, an office building. But this one had secrets. The new night shift worker, Vikram, was new to the company. Fresh out of college and excited to start his first job, he had no problem with the night shift. It was quiet, peaceful even, or so he thought. The building was an old one, decades old, and it creaked constantly, especially when the wind howled against its worn-out windows. But Vikram didn't mind, at least not at first. His first week passed uneventfully. He filed papers, checked emails, and logged reports, the usual boring routine. The lights above him buzzed faintly, casting long shadows in the empty cubicles around him. But it was on the sixth night that things started to change. The strange occurrences. It was around 2 a.m. when Vikram noticed it, an eerie silence. The building always had some noise, air conditioning, distant traffic, but tonight it was as if the world had gone mute. And then he heard it, a faint whisper. He looked up, expecting to see someone behind him, but the office was as empty as ever. Only the soft glow of his computer screen illuminated the room. Probably just the wind, he muttered to himself. But then, a few minutes later, the printer behind him woke to life. He turned in his chair, frowning. The printer was off, wasn't it? Slowly, he stood up and approached it, his footsteps echoing in the empty office. The printer spat out a single sheet of paper. Vikram's breath caught in his throat as he saw the words typed across it in bold black letters. Who's there? The presence in the office. His heart raced, but Vikram tried to laugh it off. Someone must be playing a prank, right? It was just a joke. It had to be. But then, the whispers started again. This time, they were clearer. Come closer, they seemed to say. The sound wasn't coming from behind him now. It was coming from down the hall. The corridor leading to the old storage room was always dark, and for good reason. Nobody went there anymore. That part of the building had been closed off years ago. But tonight, Vikram could see a light flickering at the end of the hall. A dim, pale light, as though someone had left a lamp on in the abandoned room. Hello? Vikram called out, trying to steady his voice. Is someone there? No answer, only silence, and that light flickering, inviting him to step closer. The ghostly employee. Curiosity got the better of him. He walked slowly down the hall, each step heavier than the last. The air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to stretch, as if they were watching him, waiting for him to reach the end. When he reached the storage room, he hesitated. The door was slightly ajar, a soft creak echoing in the stillness. He pushed it open. The room was empty, except for an old desk in the corner. The lamp on it flickered weakly, casting strange shapes on the walls. And sitting at the desk was a stack of yellowed papers with an old computer beside it. Who turned this on? Vikram whispered. The computer screen flickered to life. Help me, flashed across the monitor in bold, desperate letters. His stomach dropped. He took a step back, but the door behind him slammed shut with a loud bang. The whispers grew louder now, filling the room. They weren't just whispers anymore. They were voices, dozens of them, all speaking at once. He spun around, his eyes scanning the room, and then he saw her. In the corner, standing just out of the light, was a figure, a woman. Her face was hidden in the shadows, but her outline was unmistakable. Her long hair draped over her shoulders, and she wore a white dress, tattered and stained. Who are you? Vikram asked, his voice shaking. The figure didn't move at first, and then, slowly, she stepped into the light. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and vacant. Dark bruises marred her neck, and her mouth was twisted in an unnatural grimace. You shouldn't have come here, she whispered, her voice cold and hollow. You shouldn't have stayed. The office's dark secret? Vikram stumbled backward, his heart pounding in his chest. What? What do you want? The woman didn't answer. Instead, she pointed to the desk. Vikram's eyes followed her finger to the papers scattered across the surface. He picked one up, his hands trembling. It was a termination letter, dated over 10 years ago. The name at the top, Sanya Malhotra. He remembered now. The rumors. The story about the employee who had worked here before, how she had been let go after accusing the company of mistreating her, how she had mysteriously disappeared after her termination. They said she had killed herself in the very same office. Help me! Her voice echoed through the room again, and suddenly the whispers returned, louder, more frantic. The shadows on the walls began to shift, forming faces, hands reaching out toward him. The office was filled with them, the ones who had been forgotten, the ones who had been wronged. And then the lights went out. The final warning. Vikram felt the cold hands grab him, pulling him into the darkness. He screamed, struggling to break free, but the shadows were relentless. He could hear them now, all around him, whispering, chanting, as if they were part of the walls themselves. You're one of us now, the voices whispered in unison. You'll never leave. The next morning, the office was as quiet as ever. Vikram's desk sat empty, his computer still on. No one noticed he was gone, but sometimes, when the night shift workers pass by the old storage room, they hear strange noises, whispers, faint typing, and footsteps echoing down the hall. And sometimes, if they're brave enough to look, they see a figure sitting at the old desk in the corner, a figure dressed in white, waiting for the next visitor to join her. So, if you ever find yourself working late, alone in the office, you might want to avoid that dark corridor, because once the whispers start, it's already too late.